let's dive in. Today we're taking a closer look at the Canon EOS R50.
Sounds fun.
We're going to be using the Amazon product page as our guide, by the way.
Ah, good source. Lots of info there. And user reviews, too.
Yeah, exactly. I'll make sure to link it in the description below so you can follow along. But basically, we're trying to see if this camera lives up to all the hype, you know?
See if it's the right tool for the job, so to speak.
Exactly. Right off the bat, they're marketing it as like the camera for content creators.
Makes sense. Lots of creators out there these days.
Compact, lightweight, 24.2 megapixels, 4K video.
Hitting all the right notes. On paper, at least.
Right, right. We'll have to see about that. But I mean, I do remember when I first switched to a system that had more lens options. It was a game changer.
Oh, yeah, definitely. The RF mount on this thing opens up a lot of possibilities.
Totally. You're not just buying a camera, you're buying into a whole system.
A system that can grow with you as your needs change.
Exactly. Before we go too far down that rabbit hole, though, let's talk about the guts of this camera.
Sure.
The product page mentions a DIGIC-X processor. What's that all about?
Well, it's basically the brain of the operation, handles all the complex stuff behind the scenes.
So it's what makes the images look so good.
Yeah, and allows it to handle things like 4K video, without slowing down.
Right, right. And speaking of 4K video, the specs on this thing are impressive.
They really are.
Yeah.
We're talking 6K oversampled 4K at 30 frames per second.
Oversampled, what's that mean exactly?
Basically, it's capturing more information than it needs and then condensing it down. So you end up with super sharp, detailed footage.
Ah, I see.
And for those slow-mo shots, you've got full HD at 120 frames per second. Pretty sweet.
Yeah, that is pretty sweet. Now, there's also this movie for close-up demo mode. Seems kind of niche, but interesting.
Definitely tailored for a certain type of creator, like if you're doing product reviews or something.
Yeah, or those how-to videos everyone's making these days.
Exactly. Shifts focus between you and the object you're showing off. Pretty clever, actually.
Makes sense. Speaking of focus, though, image quality is kind of make or break, right?
Absolutely.
What's this dual-pixel CMOS AF2 all about? Sounds complicated.
It's just a fancy way of saying it's got really good autofocus, like really fast and accurate, 100% coverage, 651 zones.
So no more blurry pictures because the camera couldn't focus?
In theory, yeah. Plus, it's got subject detection and tracking, so it can actually identify and follow things like people, animals, vehicles.
Whoa, that's wild. Like, it knows what it's looking at.
Pretty much. Uses deep learning technology.
I gotta admit, I never really pay attention to all the technical jargon on these product pages. I just kind of, look at the pictures and see what other people are saying.
Well, to be fair, it does say on there that the tracking isn't perfect in every situation, but the reviews seem pretty positive.
Good to know. So it can focus. It knows what it's looking at. But what about capturing action? Those split-second moments.
Well, that's where the continuous shooting speed comes in. This thing can shoot at 12 frames per second. 15 if you use the electronic shutter.
Wow. That's a lot of pictures, like rapid fire.
Yep. Perfect for capturing those fleeting moments.
Yeah, or those moments where your kid just won't sit still. Anyway, for everyone listening, I'll put a link to the Amazon product page in the description below so you can check out all the specs and details. But I think it's safe to say this camera can do a lot.
It can. So what are your initial thoughts so far? Anything standing out to you?
Well, I think for me, it's the video capabilities, combined with how easy it seems to use.
Yeah, that 6K oversampled 4K is pretty impressive, especially in such a small package.
Right. Like, you could really step up your video game with this thing.
No doubt. And that ease of use you mentioned, it's not just marketing hype.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of the reviewers on Amazon, they actually highlight that. Even people who are, like, brand new to photography.
That's good to hear.
There's one review that said something like, this camera makes me feel like a pro. I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah, like it gives you the confidence to try new things,
Exactly. Empowers you to be creative without getting bogged down by the technical stuff.
Right. Although, speaking of the technical stuff, I did see some people mention the size.
Oh, right.
Some people loved how compact it is, but others, they thought it was a bit too small, especially if you have bigger hands.
Yeah, that's always a tough one. It's so subjective.
Totally. What works for one person might not work for another.
Exactly.
Another thing that came up in the reviews was battery life.
Yeah.
Seems like it's a bit of a mixed bag there. Some people thought it was fine, but others wished it lasted longer.
Yeah, that's often the trade-off with these smaller cameras, unfortunately. You gain portability, but you lose some battery life.
Makes sense. I mean, you could always just carry extra batteries, right?
Oh, for sure. Or an external power source if you're really going to be shooting for a long time.
Right. It all comes down to your needs, I guess.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, why should our listeners care about this camera? Why the R50?
That's a good question. Well, I think for someone who's just starting out, someone who's maybe a bit intimidated by all the fancy cameras out there.
Like our learner persona, you mean?
Yeah, exactly. I think the R50 is a really great entry point. You get amazing image quality, but it's also user-friendly.
Yeah.
And that 4K video, that's huge.
Right, right. So you're not sacrificing quality for ease of use.
Exactly. And it's not going to break the bank either.
That's always a plus.
So yeah, I think the R50 offers a lot of value for the price. But what about you? What stood out to you from the customer reviews?
You know, it's funny. Honestly, it's just like the excitement people have about this camera. It really comes through in the reviews.
Yeah, you can tell people are inspired by it.
Totally. And not just like the techie stuff, but the creative possibilities, you know?
Right, right. It's not just about specs, it's about what you can do with it.
Exactly. And that's what photography is all about, right?
It is. Capturing those moments, telling stories.
And with a camera like this, it seems like it makes that whole process more, I don't know, more approachable maybe.
Definitely. More intuitive, for sure. And speaking of approachable, we should probably mention the link to the product page again.
Oh, right. It's in the description below, everyone. You can check out all the specs